Ahead on Straight Talk.
This is a community that has a passion for local news.
Despite the widely held belief local journalism is important, the industry faces mounting hurdles.
72% of the newspaper staff was lost between 2017 and 2022.
But amid declining revenue, staff, and even public trust, there are pockets of hope.
At a time when circulation is going down across the country, our circulation was going up.
We sit down with the editor for the Oregonian, Therese Bottomley, ahead of her retirement, to talk everything from the state of the industry.
The very fabric of these communities can be undermined because people simply don't know what's going on.
To highlights from her storied career, right now on Straight Talk. Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Stephanie Domerat. Now this week we dive into a topic close to our hearts here at KGW, local journalism. And with a woman who's had a front row to history in Oregon for more than 4 decades, editor of the Oregonian, Therese Bottomley. Bottomley has been with the Oregonian for 42 years, holding several different titles across her tenure. She began as a copy desk intern just days after graduating from the University of Oregon in 1983. From there, she worked her way up to eventually take over as VP of Content and Executive Editor in 2018. She recently announced she will be stepping down as editor, retiring in the coming months. Her last day with the Oregonian will be on August 1st. Therese, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's an honor to have you, and your first TV interview ever, which
Yes.
you've escaped it so far. We appreciate you being here.
Happy to be here.
So as we mentioned, you've been with the Oregonian for a long time. So why is now the time for retirement?
I think it's just a time of tremendous change in the local news business, and it's also a time for us of relative stability. You know, we've really found our footing. Our readership is growing because of the website Oregon Live. Our revenues are stable, and so I don't want to leave in a moment of crisis. I want to leave in a moment of growth, and that's where we are today.
Well, it's an incredible accomplishment to work in the same newsroom for 42 years, moving your way all the way up from an internship. So what has it been like for you all of these years, having a front row seat to Oregon history and being part of sharing it with the public?
Well, it's really been a privilege. I started in 1983 when we still primarily were on typewriters and optical scanning machines and pneumatic tubes that would send the triplicate paper down to be scanned in, and the copy desk would then put the headline on and send it off to the presses. And when you think about the pace of technological change, it's really been astounding. You know, Google just came in, iPhones just came in, 2007, right? And think about how much those things have changed the way we do journalism. And when I think about the scope of change from electric typewriters to computers, social media, video, audio, everything else that we use today to get stories out in front of the public, it's really been a privilege to be part of that.
Yeah, I bet. Did you always know you wanted to be in journalism?
I always wanted to be in journalism. I never had worked at my school paper, but when I was at the University of Oregon, I did join the journalism school and was lucky enough to get an internship the summer I graduated, and I never left. Longest internship in history.
That's for sure, with increasing responsibility along the way, right? Yeah, did you ever waver? Like, did you feel like journalism isn't for me, or was this something that you found your footing and you just couldn't get enough of, you think?
It's really a public service mission. You know, I think it draws people who really do want to make the community better, and the ability to get out there and tell stories and make a difference for the good of the community. I mean, that was just really compelling and still is compelling.
As journalists, you touched on it a little bit, but we do have the privilege of covering, you know, the stories and people's most vulnerable moments on their best days, on their hardest days. There are stories that stay with us, I think, through our career. And though a lot of your time has been spent as an editor, I want to ask you, like, what were those really big stories that stood out for you over the last 4 decades?
Well, one of the first was the Thurston School shooting in 1998. It happened in Springfield, Oregon, a couple hours drive south from here. And people forget because unfortunately school shootings have become more commonplace, but they forget that this was one of the biggest and the earliest. And it was so shocking and so out of the ordinary and difficult to cover. There are many tears in the newsroom that day. We deployed dozens of people south. We ended up renting a block of motel rooms. We stayed down there for weeks covering that story. And it really was just extraordinary and just so painful.
It was one of the first, as you mentioned, if not the first, sadly. I would imagine making the decisions on how to cover a story like that was really difficult.
Yeah, it was very difficult and complicated by the distance. And, you know, we didn't have Twitter back then. We didn't have even smartphones. You know, we had flip phones. And it was technologically difficult, pre-Google. So again, you're looking in bulk directories and trying to find people. And just, again, the human toll of trying to speak to survivors. These are high school kids, and they just went through one of the most horrific things they would ever experience. And that takes a toll on reporters. We're human, too. And like I said, there are a lot of tears shed in the newsroom that day over that story.
Are there other stories that stand out for you?
Well, some of the more recent ones I'm really proud of are our series called Ghosts of Highway 20, which looked at a serial killer in Oregon who had never before been identified as a multiple murderer, John Aykroyd. He was responsible for deaths along the Highway 20, which goes from Newport, Oregon, across the country. And we did a series that really highlighted the stories of the women who were his victims. So we didn't make the detectives the heroes of the story. We certainly didn't focus on him, but we really elevated the voices of the women involved. And I think that was a very compelling series. We did an accompanying video. Like I said, we have these new tools now. And the video of the 4 or 5 parts together on YouTube has been viewed 38 million times. And so to me, it's an example of how we can do journalism differently and reach a lot more people.
I want to talk a little bit about how technology, touched on it a bit there, but how it's changed our industry, how it's changed journalism and newspaper over time. What would you say about that?
Well, Oregon Live, you know, has been around for a couple decades, and that is the way we reach most readers today. So it's changed local journalism because TV people used to go out with a camera and then go on the air. Now you have websites too, you write stories, you know, we do video. So it's forced all journalists to find new skills, and video is one, audio, we have a full suite of podcasts. We have, of course, social media. We're on all the platforms. We have 2.2 million followers on social media. So even as the print newspaper industry has been challenged and has shrunk over time, our readership continues to grow, our audience continues to grow because of these new ways of meeting people where they are. And most often today, that's on their smartphone.
It also, I would imagine, increases the pace. You have to kind of get a story up when you have it, as opposed to whenever print time is at 3 a.m. or,
yes.
You know, when is print time actually?
Well, it's closer to 9:30 p.m. now.
Oh,
it used
wow.
to be 1 a.m.
Okay.
But again, you see how that's changed over the years.
Yes.
But yes, our readers expect speed. You know, we're also competitive. We want to be first with the news, but we also want to be absolutely accurate and correct. So we're going to take the time to check the information and double check the information and have an editor pass eyes over it. But yeah, readers expect, they hear sirens go by and they wonder, what is that down the street? And they want the media to answer that. And again, we have the tools now to be very quick with Twitter, now X, or social media. We can get the news out very, very quickly.
So how do you think social media in general has impacted the journalism industry?
Well, I think it has created this expectation of speed and of brevity, and I think we always want, as journalists, to make sure, again, that it's accurate, but also make sure there's appropriate context. And so, you know, we might hold something back if we're not sure it's ready for prime time. We're going to hold it back until we are absolutely 100% confident, because we know in the age of social media, once something is let loose, it gets shared, it gets passed along. It's very hard to catch up in the social media world with a nuance or a fact error. We want to get it right the first time.
Do you worry that as social media increases and people look to social media more for their news or for their information, that it will compromise the integrity of journalism, or that it is now?
Well, I hope that it helps make local journalism more valuable to the community, because they can see you, they can see me, they can call us, they can talk to us, they know us. And that differentiates us from a stray or random post from someone they don't know, or a rumor that's passed along by somebody on Facebook. We have great value because we are vetting the facts. We are going to the newsmakers. We are challenging them. We are doing our due diligence. And I think that has great value in a world where there's so much noise out there and frankly, so many bad facts out there.
So AI is something that's advancing quickly. How does the Oregonian, handle the use of AI, and how do you see that impacting journalism too?
Well, we have used automated reporting just as the Associated Press has. They've started in 2014, believe it or not. And we've used it for highly structured briefs, such as weather alerts and real estate postings. We didn't find a lot of audience for the real estate postings, so we quit doing that. But we're looking really hard. I would say we're cautiously experimenting. There are a lot of reporter tools that are really useful. For instance, if you don't want to sit through a 6-hour meeting, you can ingest the YouTube video of that, get a transcription, ask for a summary of that, and it can link to where exactly in the meeting that incident occurred. So there are many reporting tools and editing tools that AI offers that really make our jobs easier and are behind the scenes.
Yeah, and it's something to embrace, it seems like, right? Because it's not going away, and you still have that human checking, fact-checking the AI.
Yes, we always have human fact-checking, and we always disclose if we've used any tools for AI. But it's something that I think we can't ignore as journalists. It is going to fundamentally change many industries, and I don't think we want to get left behind. So cautious experimentation, always with a human looking over the final results.
Well, and some people have a mistrust of media, the media, you could say. Where do you think that comes from, and how can journalists combat that?
That's a really tough question, but you're right, it's pervasive. I think of it like Congress. People get angry at Congress, but they love their local congressman or woman. So I think of it that way. There's frustration with, quote unquote, the media, but there is, if you look at all the research, a much larger trust with local news outlets. And I always try to challenge readers when they complain about the media and say, let's talk about what we're really talking about here. There is a big difference between a local news organization covering a community with local reporters who have expertise versus what you might see on a national network, and especially a national network that blends fact-based reporting with commentary.
Is there another way you think journalists can work to combat that mistrust or build that trust?
Yeah, I think you're seeing a lot more of internal linking to original sources, a lot of explanatory messaging. Like if you look at the New York Times, they talk about how they got the story, or they talk about what the expertise of the reporter is. For the Oregonian, we put in our bios our background, our expertise, what we covered. And then I write a column regularly that pulls back the curtain a little bit on our process, the discussions we have on our newsrooms, why we made decisions the way we made them. And I think that builds trust. I get a lot of email from readers who would then ask follow-up questions or say, I really didn't think about that. Thanks for letting me know.
Yes. It is nice when you hear from viewers, I think, directly, and then you get to communicate with them. And I think it's nice to have that actual human interaction and bond. So
yeah, that builds trust.
Absolutely. We're going to continue this conversation. We have to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll have more with Therese Bottomley from the Oregonian right after this. And welcome back to Straight Talk. Today we are joined by the editor of the Oregonian, Therese Bottomley, as she wraps up 42 years with the newspaper. Therese, such an honor to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much.
So let's continue our conversation. We were talking a little bit about some public mistrust, how to build that trust. Another big part of journalism that a lot of people may not think about is that there are a lot of decisions. There are constantly decisions being made in a newsroom, especially when it comes from management. Especially as editor, you've had to make a lot of decisions. Looking back, do you think there was a time where it was a decision about how to cover something or what to cover that you maybe would have done differently going back?
Well, there is always things you look back on and think we could have done that better. And I think we have a very robust conversation in our newsroom all the time about critiquing ourselves, taking reader feedback, challenging each other. But I would point to a major project that we did called Publishing Prejudice. And it was a real deep dive into the racist history of the Oregonian. So several longtime publishers and editors were very much against anybody from the outside, anybody who immigrated here, and anybody who was not a white male. It was a difficult project to acknowledge the failures of the Oregonian for decades, to reflect the reality of our community and to lift up all of the stories. And we really undertook that after the death of George Floyd and all of the social justice protests. We said we really need to look at our own history. And as a part of that, I thought hard about an apology. And I thought, should it be an institutional apology through the editorial board? And I came to the conclusion it needed to be a human apology with a face and a name attached to it. So I did apologize for our coverage in those years and our coverage of the internment of Japanese Americans.
It's not only what we cover, how we cover it, it's sometimes what we don't cover or the voices that we don't include.
Exactly, and we set out after that to really get into the community, meet with a lot of community groups, really hear about the stories that we might be missing, and we also launched a series of stories that were more everyday joy and everyday accomplishments, so we didn't just rush in when there was a disaster or gun violence, but we were there day in and day out with the stories of joy.
Is there more work to be done in that space?
I think that's a constant, especially with the community growing as fast as it is. And it's just, as you know, every day a fire hose of news, and you're trying to pick and choose among so many worthy stories.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about big picture in Oregon, journalism, newspapers around the state. I know you're very involved in the industry, not just here in Portland, and other publications as well. It's no secret that local journalism has financial challenges, not just here in Oregon, across the country. How would you say Oregon journalism and publications are doing right now financially?
I think it continues to be a struggle. I think everybody is fighting the good fight, but we really could use some help, and that's where Senate Bill 686 comes in. I know you want to talk about that.
Yeah.
We have seen the diminution of local journalism through a closure of newspapers or through consolidation of ownership. We have seen some bright spots with online-only smaller organizations popping up to serve their community. Those have been really great, but they have a completely different revenue model. It's the mid-sized metro dailies that serve the larger audiences that lost when online advertising, came into the forefront with Craigslist and others. And now you have Google essentially using AI to summarize our work, so nobody has to click back to our news websites. They're taking our content and they are not compensating us for all the work that we do, and that needs to be fixed.
And that is part of Senate Bill 686, right?
Yes.
Tell us more about that and how you feel about that bill,
Yeah.
and what it could mean.
Yeah, this is a part of a national conversation about this issue of how the tech platforms have benefited from the work of local journalists and have not compensated them at all. And it was modeled a bit after an effort in California that ended up in mediation. They did reach resolution. In this case, the bill is still in the legislature. We're waiting and watching very carefully for it to move forward. And we have a lot of people supporting that bill. It's a matter of fundamental fairness. If you're going to take our work and you're going to benefit from it and you're going to profit from it and keep people on your platform and not send them to our platform where we can make money off that audience, then you ought to compensate us. You ought to compensate all of the newspapers for the work that you're taking.
Do you think that stands a chance of passing from where you see now?
I certainly hope so. I mean, it has a lot of support. I think legislators who are backing it and lining up behind it see the fundamental fairness issue here. It's just fundamentally unfair to take our content and not give us any compensation for that work. Reporting is difficult. It's time consuming, it's expensive. We have to have reporters sit through those city council meetings, walk with those protesters, research the court documents. That all is expensive. We're bearing the cost of that. Google and Facebook are benefiting from it and not paying us a dime.
I want to shift gears a little bit. You've played a big role in allowing journalists access to public information, records, court cases, public spaces. I know this is something that you're very passionate about. You even have it self-proclaimed on your social media, public records geek.
Yeah.
So why is this type of transparency so important?
Well, it's our information. We are the proxy for the public. The public has supported all this work with their tax dollars. The public deserves to know how well their elected officials are working, how good the leadership is in their state agencies or on city council. This is basic oversight. This is informing citizens so they can make choices in our democracy, right? It's fundamental to what we do as journalists. I have always felt passionately, maybe because I was once an athlete, that I am a bit competitive. And if they put up a fuss about it and don't want to give us something, then I get all the more excited about fighting to get it. I wonder what they're hiding. And so I have tried to, over the years, really deploy the public records law as it is intended to shine a light and to increase transparency on the Oregon government and city government.
And oftentimes this isn't just the Oregonian. I mean, news outlets, including KGW, all leadership works together to get this public access.
Absolutely, yeah. We often have media coalitions and go in together. Or once we've pried a record loose, it's free for every other news outlet to go and get that same record. For instance, we had an investigation of the sewer agency in Washington County. They were spending lavishly on these trips to Hawaii. A lot of that information came from our public records requests.
We only have a few minutes, so we did mention it at the top of the show, but you are, of course, a native Oregonian. You've spent your career being instrumental in the state's journalism. In 2018, you were inducted into the Hall of Achievement at the University of Oregon. And in a video, colleagues spoke about you. Someone called you unflappable. A senior reporter on your staff said, quote, "She's got the editing of a surgeon, a mind of an attorney, and the soul of a philosopher." And someone else said, quote, "She not only makes our journalism better every day, but she makes everyone around them better every day." What beautiful things to be said about you as a leader.
Really nice, very, very nice.
Do you have advice for others on how to be an excellent leader?
I think that listening and really listening, taking the time to listen, and management leadership folks have always said one of the most powerful things a boss can say to somebody is, "How can I help?" And I believe in servant leadership. I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves and post a story or jump in and fill a weekend shift if I need to, and I want to help my staff, which is one of the best newsrooms in the country, be as successful as they can be.
For those people who are considering getting into journalism as a career, or maybe are starting out as a journalist and are brand new, what would you want to say to them?
I am thrilled with the new journalists who come into our newsroom through our internship program or fellowships. They are going to win the world, and they will figure out the stable revenue model going forward. But they're digital natives. They're excited about journalism. Journalism should be a fun and rewarding career, and I think they're going to do terrific.
What would you want people to know about local journalism and how they can support their local journalists?
It matters. Your subscription matters. Viewing KGW matters. All of that supports local journalism, local jobs, accountability for local officials. We need subscribers, we need our audience, you need viewers, we need readers. They hold us accountable, but they help us hold others accountable. We don't exist without that support.
I love that. Therese Bottomley, such an honor to speak with you today.
Thanks so much for having me, Stephanie.
Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank
I know
you.
you have lots of fun things planned ahead, so thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching today. Join us next week. We'll discuss the world of psychedelic treatment for mental health conditions, more specifically known as magic mushrooms. And now 2 years into its debut in Oregon, we'll sit down with a research expert and an advocacy group to learn more about the relatively new option and how it's being used here in the state. And a reminder, you can stream Straight Talk on your own schedule anytime. You can download the free KGW Plus app, available now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. We'll see you right back here next week on Straight Talk. Thanks for watching.